下到去，他们随时都关系。
好，各位感官贵宾、各位女士、先生，大家早安！再一次的欢迎各位今天继续出席我们第二天议程工作坊的精彩内容。Again, I welcome all of the guests to join the Day 2 agenda of this session. 我们现在要进行的是议题3，名称是区域联防人口贩运，将会有几场演讲为各位来报告。The title of the first session 3 is the Regional Joint Prevention of Human Trafficking. 同样的，我们会邀请到一位主持人为我们引言，并且介绍我们的主讲贵宾。我们在这个阶段所邀请到的是行政院防治人口贩运协调汇报委员郑晶晶郑委员来为我们进行引言。Now, please welcome the moderator of this session, Ms. Zheng Jingjing, who is a member of the Cabinet Anti-TIP Task Force Committee, to introduce the topics and the speakers. 我们现在掌声欢迎郑晶晶委员，有请。
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. 各位女士先生，大家早安。非常荣幸，非常高兴能够有这个机会来担任今天的这个场次的这个主持人。那我想我们今天的这个主题呢是这个场次的主题是区域联防人口贩运Regional Joint Prevention of Human Trafficking。那我想大家都知道这个人口贩运呢，它不是一个就是一个单一国家或一个单一地区，它是一个全球性的问题那所以呢，如何在全球或者在各区域，大家可以来共同合作来预防这个问题呢，就变得非常非常的重要那今天呢，在这个场次里面呢，我们有邀请到来自各国的这个讲者来为我们来分享一些相关的主题，也分享他们各国的经验呢。我觉得是非常有意义的那因为我想面对这样子的一个人口贩运的问题呢，我们不可能就是由单一国家或少数国家来面对或者来防治，一定是要大家一起来努力的所以我想今天所有参与者一定也非常的高度的期待我们今天所邀请的讲者以及语坛人呢，在这个主题上面呢，可以给予我们很多的这个给我们新的看见然后也可以从他们的经验里面，我们台湾也可以去学习如何在这个议题上面呢，能够呢跟其他国家一起来努力，一起来打击犯罪，一起来防治这些人口贩运所造成的问题。那我想因为时间有限所以呢，我接下来呢就要来欢迎呢我们今天的第一位这个主讲人The first speaker is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. Okay, Cardinal Tagle is from Caritas Internationalis, and the topic of his speech is how Caritas Internationalis is combating human trafficking with its global network. Let's welcome Cardinal Tagle.
Good morning to everyone, and I bring you greetings from the big, great family called Caritas Internationalis, and also from my country of origin, the Philippines, the Archdiocese of Manila. As I start my presentation, I first would like to ask all of you to watch, not me, but a video presentation.
Aunque tratemos de ignorarlo, la esclavitud no es algo de otro tiempo. Ante esta trágica realidad, no podemos lavarnos las manos si no queremos ser de alguna manera cómplices de estos crímenes contra la humanidad. No podemos ignorar que hoy hay esclavitud en el mundo, tanto o más quizás que antes. Recemos por la acogida generosa de las víctimas de la trata de personas y de la prostitución forzada y de la violencia.
The solidarity of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, with the many victims of this horrible crime of trafficking in human persons, very much related to forced slavery, new forms of slavery, prostitution, and even the harvesting of body parts for sale. So not only the human person, but even the single parts of the human body are sometimes treated just like as commodities. And it is in this spirit that we would like to share also what Caritas Internationalis has been doing to combat human trafficking, especially as a global confederation connected also to other organizations. Since 1897, when the first Caritas was founded in Germany, Caritas has been working with migrants, and particular attention has been given already at that time, in the late 19th century, to the situation of migrant women, both those who were migrating internally and transnationally, for they were considered the most vulnerable to exploitation and abuse during migration. So Caritas Germany has this specialized organization in Via, where women victims of trafficking for sexual exploitation receive assistance and support. Now, the Catholic Church started to participate since the beginning of the debate on the legal response to human trafficking. In fact, the Holy See contributed to the discussion on the Palermo Protocol in the year 2000. That was the beginning for the international community to seriously recognize the phenomenon of human trafficking. At the same time, Caritas organizations started to organize themselves in a common network. I think this is one value to having a confederation. The local, national, regional organizations saw the need to work together by networking. And the issues were missing people who often became victims of human trafficking. And they addressed trafficking, especially for sexual exploitation. That network is called COAT-NET, Christian Organizations Against Trafficking Network. So it is a Christian network against trafficking in human beings. Today, the global COAT-NET counts around 45 organizations all over the world. Not only Caritas organizations, but also other Catholic groups, such as the World Union of Catholic Women Organizations, or from the ecumenical family, the Anglican Alliance, the Orthodox Alliances. and Caritas International serves as the coordinating body. In 2005, the first commitment paper was developed by representatives of COPNET and the Caritas Internationalis General Secretary, in which the phenomenon was described, and Caritas in the Confederation declared to commit itself to combating human trafficking. In 2009, the issue of female migration was taken up more deeply by Caritas Internationalis. It became clear that male and female migration experiences differ from each other. There are a lot of common points, but also some differences. Men and women face different opportunities, but also different risks, different challenges, different vulnerabilities to discrimination, to exploitation, to violence, and to specific health risks. Having studied the issues and having produced a policy document with the title The Female Face of Migration in 2012, Caritas Internationalis started focusing to ensure more decent work for domestic workers. And most of the domestic workers are women. The situation and plight of domestic workers was highlighted in our Middle Eastern colleagues, or by our Middle Eastern colleagues, where cases of trafficking, slavery, and severe exploitation were denounced by civil society organizations, including Caritas. Caritas Lebanon. Is there anyone from Caritas Lebanon or Mona? Caritas Lebanon opened a number of centers for victims of trafficking for domestic work. And they started to provide legal assistance to such women to obtain justice and compensations for them. I tell you, when I visited one of those centers of Caritas, where women, victims of trafficking and slavery, are sheltered, my heart got broken to see some of them not only emotionally harassed and victimized, but even physically. You see the physical marks of exploitation and violence. Caritas Internationalis, from its side, started to follow and to contribute to the discussions of the International Labor Organization that in 2011 brought to the adoption of the famous Convention 189, Decent Work for Domestic Workers, which was considered a breakthrough for achieving better working conditions for domestic workers. With time, new forms of exploitation have become the focus of COPNET, and thanks to its members, its ecumenical members too. Such forms include trafficking in maritime industry. So you see women, domestic workers, also exploitation of maritime workers, exploitation in construction work, agriculture, fisheries, and child exploitation. So Caritas, through COPNET, is able to enter a network addressing all of these things. In 2016, the first ever conference involving both National Caritas and the Bishops' Conferences of Africa was organized, titled Human Trafficking Within and from Africa. This was held in Nigeria. Efficient collaboration between various church organizations, other Christian denomination organizations such as the Anglicans and other faith organizations like our brothers and sisters of the Islamic faith created a good momentum for taking significant commitment of church leaders in Africa to combat trafficking by collaborating with each other. And one of the results of this gathering was an idea and further realization of a joint project in 3 countries following a well-known migration route. So this is very practical. Identify a migration route. And so they saw Malawi, Eswatini, and the South African Republic. And between the 3 organizations of the Catholic Church, namely Caritas, Talita Kum, and the WUPWO, the project fostered better understanding of the realities and the flows of human trafficking and the challenges of anti-trafficking initiatives of organizations in countries of origin, countries of transit, and countries of destination. And the networking helped to provide better assistance to the victims of trafficking in Africa. This is to ensure that there is effective and professional assistance to the victims. Given the complexity of the crime, it is not enough to do or to want to do something, but every action must be well prepared, studied, based on research and evidence. We need to understand well the phenomenon, the context in which it evolves. And from the learning of Caritas, we need to boost regional partnerships. And this is what happened with the 3 countries in Africa could serve as a model for other initiatives of Caritas in other regions of the world. Am I talking too fast? No. Too slow? No. I'm coming back to the close. How about the translators? Are you okay? Still okay? Yeah. Okay. You can breathe, huh? Yeah. We don't want you to be victims of human trafficking, forced labor. So I'm coming to the close of my presentation. Another example on the part of Caritas is the bilateral projects between Caritas in countries of origin, as I said, and those in countries of destination, aimed at accompanying migrants. And through such accompaniment, we help prevent them from entering into risky and vulnerable situations. This is due to the fact that a migrant may leave his or her country legally and with a contract, but they still become victims of trafficking upon arrival in another country. And we in the Philippines have had so many experiences of this. You verify whether their papers before leaving the country were legally obtained, and they were. But how come, and the country of destination or even transit, they fall into the hands of traffickers? So Caritas from destination countries, and for example, Caritas Lebanon, share knowledge about possible risky situations and how to prevent them. So this is shared with the Caritas from origin countries, such as Caritas in Ethiopia, Sri Lanka, Nepal. Such knowledge is of high importance, great importance for these Caritas organizations, especially when they provide pre-departure training for future migrants, explaining to them the possible risks. explaining to them also what measures they could take when they are in danger, providing also for them preparation in terms of intercultural and interreligious realities that they might face, and what they should realistically do, legally do, when unfortunately they become victims of human trafficking. Such collaboration is crucial when victims decide also to return to the home of origin. Sometimes some victims, and I have interviewed victims, who refuse to go back home because of shame. And they would rather be victims again of exploitation to earn a little more money to pay their loans and their debts. So those who want to return must also be helped. So finally, as we have seen, the experience of Caritas through networking among our Caritas organizations, providing this line of communication, networking with other organizations, ecumenical and other faiths, networking with governments, with law enforcement bodies, networking with business organizations, networking with labor employment agencies. This is important. But in the end, ultimately, what Caritas as a body, being the arm of the Catholic Church, we share also, through this networking, a vision of the human person, the vision of a human person created in God's image, with dignity, a person who is not a commodity, a person who is not an object, and to enliven that vision in other human beings. How could you do this? How could you sell a brother who could be you? Can you not see the dignity that is in you, in others? And hopefully this vision will lead to solidarity, accompaniment, and we take care of each other as we take care of the one human family inhabiting the one common earth, our common home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
非常感谢卡德摩他会非常充满感情的，非常充满情感的一个演说哈。那卡德摩他会从那个 Caritas 它成立的一个历史，还有它的目的，还有它的目标以及它的成效，来跟我们分享 Caritas 在全球的这个运作以及它的果效。那我想在刚刚他对他的演说里面呢，也让我们知道 Caritas 它是这个组织呢，是从上帝对人的爱出发，那在全球各地呢，协助人口贩运的受害人，尤其是性剥削的受害人，以及这些在全球各地受到奴役、受到这个生理、心理各方面财务剥削的家事劳工。那我想从刚刚的演说里面，我们可以看到、可以听到，就是Caritas 呢有很多的宝贵的个案，他们透过协助累积了很多的经验。那在最后呢，他也让我们知道，在打击这个人口贩运的问题，真的是需要全世界就全球的各式各样的 network， 大家一起来合作，大家一起来努力哈。我想我非常认同人是上帝所创造的非常非常宝贵的生命，它不是商品，我们不应该来贩卖它， 不应该来这个恶待他哈。那我觉得这是我个人刚刚也感受非常的深刻哈。那我相信各位也会受到刚刚听完这个 Cardinal Cagley 的演说，应该也都深受感动。那接下来呢，我要来介绍第二位 speaker。那第二位 speaker 呢是 Mr. Christopher Patter。那 Mr. Patter 是 可以就是禁止这些产品呢出口到美国去哦。虽然法律不是万能的，但是我很相信我们在处理这个人口贩运的种种问题呢，我觉得法律还是一个非常重要的工作。另外呢，刚刚 Mr. Pepper 提到一点，我个人也很认同，就是这个 forced labor 的问题。如果在第一时间没有被好好的处理的话，真的就会像人间蒸发一样地下化了哈。就好像刚刚他举了一个例子哈，就是有些劳工呢被骗出国了哈，以为呢要去发大财了，赚大钱了哈，所以呢自己被骗了，可是在进海关的时候哈还carry 一个 big smile， 一想到要发大财就很开心。所以呢，在第一线这个执法的海关人员呢是可能也不会发现说，这个人可能是被骗要来。这个国家呢非法打工的哈，那一旦呢这种非法的这种移工呢进入了这个入境之后呢，其实一旦他进入工厂，他的行动受到控制，我们就很难去发现这些个案，也很难防治哦。确实，我想在台湾以及任何一个国家可能都有这样的问题。那就像刚刚 Mr. Peter 在结论的时候所说的哈。希望这个 conference 不是只是大家来坐下来听听这些精彩的 presentation， 看看名片，然后回去就结束了哈。我们希望这是一个开始而已，希望真的能够透过这个 conference， 大家可以一起来努力，一起来打击这些人口贩运的问题。Okay, now I'm going to introduce the next speaker, Miss Han Dan. She's a trafficking in person specialist from Vietnam, and the topic of her presentation is Transnational Investigative Cooperation, TIC on TIP cases in ASEAN region. Let's welcome Ms. Dan.
你好，the organizers, international speakers, participants, colleges, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to everyone. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the organizer for inviting me to this international conference, so that I have the opportunity to share with you the information about transnational investigation cooperation in human trafficking cases in ASEAN region. So when I mention ASEAN, it's including 10 countries, and of which 7 countries is the source and transit country and also destination, that is Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And we have other 3 countries, which are Singapore, Malaysia, and Brunei's destination countries. So when we talk about transnational investigative cooperation, we mean police-to-police cooperation, and that's one of the important approach to tackle and address human trafficking. Let me ask you a question. When you heard of police-to-police cooperation and the person who talked about this topic, do you expect a very tall, big, old, with muscle and a lot of equipment, or do you expect little, small, short women? Say yes or no? Okay, thank you. And may I ask you, in this room, who have been or who was working on TIP in ASEAN country, please raise your hand. Yeah, so we have few people working on TIP in ASEAN country. Thank you. So in my presentation, I will use a number of short abbreviation So I will call TIC, that's for Transnational Investigative Cooperation, and I will use TIP for trafficking in person. So my presentation will cover a number of information. First, I would like to share with you some background information about the TIP situation in ASEAN country and also ASEAN responses to it. And because we talk about TIC, so why, what, when, who, and how we can have TIC, and what has been done in ASEAN region in terms of TIC. And I also share with you the case study that I have been supporting over the last 5 years on the TIC between Malaysia and Vietnam. And later on, I also share with you the challenges and recommendations for TIC. ASEAN region is not different from other parts of the world, and the TIP situation is also very dynamic here. When we mention about TIP, there's a number of routes, pattern, and trend in ASEAN country. Trafficking in person for the purpose of sexual exploitation, for forced labor, for prostitution, and for domestic servitude, for forced and arranged marriages, for forced begging, for child abduction, kidnapping, and child trafficking. We also have TIP for the purpose of body organ removals and surrogacy. So surrogacy is to force women to give birth to the child, and also trafficking of pregnant women as well. And child sex tourism, also popular in some of the countries. So you can see in the map of 10 ASEAN countries, trafficking in person in this country also happen internally within each country and also within the region. Trafficking from this country, from one country to the neighboring country, for example, we have trafficking from Vietnam to Laos, to Cambodia, and further to the third country like Malaysia, Singapore, or to Europe, to Middle East, to Africa. Or we also have trafficking from the Philippines to Hong Kong, to Malaysia, to Middle East, or trafficking from Myanmar to Thailand, to Cambodia, to Indonesia for fishing vessel. And the main destination for the region is Malaysia and Singapore. ASEAN has been considered the leaders in the fight of the human trafficking. So since 1990s, ASEAN has been adopted TIP as the top priority, and it has considered TIP as the serious crime against person, and ASEAN has TIP has been the agenda of the ASEAN country and its member states. So together, the member states have made a great stride toward ASEAN goal of ending impunity for traffickers and securing justice for victims of this serious crime. So within the region, ASEAN has developed and adopted a number of instruments that has been agreed and endorsed by its member states. For example, the ASEAN Vision for 2020, or the ASEAN Declaration on Transnational Crime, ASEAN Declaration on against trafficking in person, particularly women and children. And most recently, ASEAN has adopted, and most of the countries have ratified the ASEAN Convention Against Trafficking in Persons, particularly women and children, and it's a legal binding document. And also within the region, we have the mutual legal assistance in criminal matters among like-minded member countries. So in addition to this legal instrument, ASEAN also have a number of mechanisms to combat and counter human trafficking. ASEAN have the Senior Official Meetings on Transnational Crime, which including 8 crimes, and TIP is one of the 8 crimes that on the agenda of the SOMPC. We also have voluntary lead shepherd of SOMPC working group on TIP, and we have one representative from the Philippines here. So Philippines right now is the lead shepherd of this group. We also have the group of head specialist investigative unit on TIP cases and other technical working groups. So the head of specialist unit group is also have regular meeting, and the top agenda of this group is to identify and rescue victims of human trafficking, to conduct the investigation, and also to collect and share information about TIP cases. So when we talk about TIC, who, what, when, where, why, and how we can conduct TIC. So we all know that trafficking in person is highly complex issue, and it's very difficult to investigate or to prosecute successfully a TIP case. And the nature of the crime is not just within the country domestically, but it happens across the border, the transnational or international. And in TIP cases, the offenders, the victim, evidence, and access can be located in 2 or even more states. It can be from the source country, transit, or destination country. And normally, trafficking in person often involves the commission of other multiple offenses. For example, the financial offenses like financial crime, money laundering, or drug trafficking, and corruption. And also, TIP cases often involve highly traumatized and vulnerable victims, including children. And recently, we have a lot of cases that pregnant women were trafficked as well. So it's important to timely identify and rescue victims of trafficking because TIP victims sometimes is the only main source of corroborative evidence. And it's important that we can have the victim account so that we can testify against the offender and protect the safety of the victim in a timely manner. And also rescue and protect the victims one side, but also to address the suspect to prevent them from further harm to other people and to other victims, to get evidence about the case. And we all know that the change of trafficking can happen from recruitment to exploitation. So by having the TIC, we have the opportunity to disrupt the entire change of trafficking in person from the source to destination country. We can also have the opportunity to return the suspect to appropriate jurisdiction to stand trial for their offense. So when we talk about police-to-police cooperation, we often refer to the police officer and the Human Trafficking Investigation Unit. And so also sometimes we need to involve the prosecutor as well. So what TIC? Normally when we mention about TIC, it's kind of a way to collect and gather information and evidence, particularly the corroborative evidence, the communication to rescue victims, to address the offenders, to conduct the investigation, not only on tip but also financial investigation as well, and also to pursue the proceed of trafficking crime. So do we use TIC in every tip case? Normally, when we think of TIC, we should first ask the question, is sufficient evidence available locally to support an investigation or prosecution or not? And if this information is not available, then are there a reasonable ground to presume that the required information or evidence can be secured to TIC? Or are there necessary structure and relationship in place to enable this information or evidence to be secured without imposing an undue burden on people or agency involved? And or whether it will cause unreasonable delay that would compromise the case. And also we should ask the question, will TIC being sought present a serious risk to the safety and well-being of the victim or other involved person? If yes, and then is that risk manageable? Also, we should ask the question whether is use of TIC necessary, or we can find other, or whether the objective can be obtained by other means, or whether TIC will strengthen the case or not, and whether such cooperation is legally viable, and if so, what is the most appropriate approach to use. And also we need to ask, what is the likely impact that will be, including on victims of the delay or non-compliance with any request of the case, and whether, on balance, the expected result outweighs the identified risk. So if all these questions can be satisfied, then we'll see how we can conduct the TIC. So in ASEAN region, the ASEAN-Australia program to combat human trafficking have been supporting the bilateral cooperation within the region. And for the starting point in 1914, a baseline assessment has been conducted before any support is implemented to see what is the current situation at that time in terms of transnational investigative cooperation. And the assessment revealed that very low levels of intelligence exchange and investigative support across the border. And there's a great difficulty among member states in obtaining data on the level of cooperation. And also there's a need for stronger cooperation cross-border, police to police, as a priority. So under this program, there's a number of activities has been done. So we have been supporting the workshop for the head of specialist investigation unit. They meet regularly to exchange information, to share the case, to share the lesson learned and experience. We also support the training on how to conduct the transnational investigative cooperation. We have regional meetings between 3 countries, 4 countries of relevance, and also the whole 10 countries in ASEAN. And between the two countries, we also support bilateral cooperation to support the training on how to handle intelligence and information exchange. We also support Interpol or focal point meeting because Interpol remains the official channel of communication between the countries. And in case there's urgent need for exchange of information, we also have supporting the ad hoc or virtual meeting. And within the region, we have the list of the contact or focal point person, so that we also have official channel through Interpol, through official agency, through the central authority, but we also have a list of contact of focal person. In case we need some to call urgently, we can communicate through informal channels such as social media, like WhatsApp, online, or Zalo or Viber. So it's not easy to set up the bilateral cooperation. It has step by step. And first is building the rapport. You know that because two agencies, two different units coming to sit together, they need time to understand the legal framework, the structure, the person, the agency. So sometimes it takes time to build the rapport. And in our experience, sometimes it takes a year just to build the rapport. So after having the relationship established, we have started to support the police to exchange information, and later on exchange the intelligence. And once the information has been exchanged, then operation activity has been conducted, and it can result in operation outcome. And it could also, in some case or complicated case, we can support the parallel or joint investigation of the tip case. So you can see in the slide that although we have been supporting a number of bilateral cooperation between the two countries, the progress is different among the countries. For example, when we start in April 1914, and by the end of the program in September 1918, as the progress between the country, in some country it can just stop at building the rapport or information exchange. But in some countries, like between Malaysia and the Philippines, they have a really rapid progress, and it can be added in the parallel and joint investigation and having some initial operational outcome. So at the end of the 4th year, the result has been recorded that at least 21 perpetrators have been arrested and charged. Among them, 9 border guard officers was arrested. And at least 80 victims of human trafficking have been rescued, and most of them are the Filipinos. So we also see the evidence of impact from this bilateral cooperation, that better relationship and more trust has been built, communication has been improved, and there's willingness and openness to communicate and exchange information and intelligence. And offender has been addressed and charged, and victim being rescued as a direct result from this bilateral cooperation. And in some of the investigation unit, we also have some evidence from the partner country saying now they can better understand the legislation of their counterpart. They can make contact of the case to their counterpart. They can refer the case. They can ask for emergency or rescue immediately the victim in other country. And some of them say that now they can start the informal communication with a counterpart in other country through WhatsApp, for example. And now we can now they can save lives of the people across the border. So these are some of the evidence that we have been collected from the counterpart. So I would like to share with you now the case study, bilateral cooperation between Vietnam and Malaysia. And you may see some of the information that can be similar in your country. So between Vietnam and Malaysia, right now, about 80 to 100 Vietnamese people are in Malaysia. These may include workers under labor contract, illegal migrant workers, Vietnamese married to Malaysian, students, tourists, prostitutes, trafficking victims. We see a common phenomenon that many Vietnamese people were recruited to work in Malaysia, and in restaurant, in hotel, in massage parlor, in beauty salon, and subsequently they were coerced into commercial sex trade. Many people, their passport was confiscated by the employer, so that you see the presentation from Mr. Chris Petter. If you have no travel document, you cannot go anywhere. You cannot do anything legally. And also, many people have been reported to be trapped in forced labor situation in factory in Malaysia. And according to the statistic from the police, Malaysia police, about nearly 6,000 people, Vietnamese people, has been granted interim protection order or protection order. That means they are potential victims of human trafficking. So over the last few years, Vietnamese people has been ranking the top thief victim in Malaysia. That's why both countries really want to cooperate with each other to support the victim of human trafficking and also to disrupt the trafficking chain from Vietnam to Malaysia. And the reason for cooperation is to provide selective returnee victim of human trafficking with opportunity to exercise their right to access to justice if they choose or if they want. To initiate cross-border investigation, to increase the level of relevant intelligence gathering concerning the traffickers and their modus operandi, and to disseminate this information and information between the two police units, and also to gather information and evidence to support further investigation within each country and to support to rescue the victim. So under the bilateral cooperation between Vietnam and Malaysia, we have set up a number of mechanisms. First, we have annual bilateral meeting in both Malaysia and Vietnam. We have TIC training for the police officer for the focal point on how to exchange information, how to handle the intelligence. Both sides appoint focal point contact person and their contact details. And both sides also use informal and formal channel of information exchange through Line, Viber, WhatsApp, and Zalo. And both countries also approve the operational cooperation framework and to provide information about the victim and about the case. So the target victim will be the person who wants to cooperate with Malaysia and might agree to provide more information back to Vietnam. The person agree to provide tip intelligence to Malaysia, or the person who may not cooperate with Malaysia police but may want to cooperate with the police of Vietnam. So they have agreed that Malaysia will inform Vietnam when a victim was returned. The Vietnam will pick up these people and to take their account. And if the Vietnam can interview the victim, they can provide information back to Malaysia to further investigate the case. And they have used a number of communication channels to exchange information and also to appoint people who can speak English to communicate. And guess what is the result? More than 100 tip cases have been discussed and cooperate, but only a small number of successfully case supported. And the bilateral cooperation just stopped at operational activities. Why? Why that? I would like to share with you some of the story. When the victim called their family in Vietnam to ask for support, and then a few days later, the family called the police, and then police contact the police in other country to support, and why administration, procedure, and communication exchange had been back and forth. A few days later, we saw an article saying that woman commit suicide. There's another story. When we got information about the victim in a massage parlor, and the police was informed, and they came to address that parlor. The victim was rescued, and while at the police station, she didn't say anything. Why? Because on the way from the place they were rescued to the police station, the victim was kept together with the offender. And on the way, they were threatened that if you make any declaration about the case, then your family back home will be in danger. So there's a number of challenges in terms of cooperation and how to conduct the tip case. We face a number of difficulties and challenges in verification of victim information and collection of the evidence. In many cases, the information the police from destination country would need to know is the passport number. But in many cases, the passport was the fake passport. They do not have the exact number, the right number of the passport. So they cannot identify the victim. And also it's very important to collect the evidence because in many cases, the trafficking victim has been trafficked for more than 10 years or in some cases 20 years. So no evidence at all. And also lack of cooperation from the victim. They were so afraid. They have been coerced. They have been enticed many times from one person to the other. So why they have to trust the police? Why they have to trust other people? Whether they didn't know whether that people can be supportable to them. And many of them, when they were rescued, they just want to go back home. They don't want to spend the whole long time during the criminal proceeding, and they don't know whether if they pursue that process, they will get compensation or not. And also, they have been threatened by the revenge to their family or by the organization of crime. There's a low level of trust between the two units, not to mention about the difference between the legal framework. In many cases, in the destination countries, they say it's the victim of human trafficking, but at the source country, they say it's not, and it's vice versa. And also, in some country, it's okay to support, but in some countries, the regulation will not allow to do it. And also, you can see this, the picture took at one of the bilateral meetings, and it's one person against the mafia. Yeah. So, and I'm not belong to the police unit, and you will see that no women in the police unit to rescue the victim. So when a man talk to a rescue victim, if it's a man and the woman was sexually abused, how can she declare? How can she make a trust to provide a statement? So like really insufficient gender balance and lack of women in the police force. And also language barrier. In Vietnam, we do not, the police officers do not speak English. In Malaysia, they can speak English, so it's hard if they want to communicate informal communication, how they can call each other without knowing the language. And so many police, they lack of sensitivity, victim sensitivity. When they meet with a victim or they rescue the victim from the process, they may ask victim, how many clients did you serve a day? See? So if they ask that question, whether the victim will want to respond or not, they don't want. Because really, it's re-traumatized them. So it's the lack of knowledge from the police also hinder the process and also hinder the cooperation for willingness to provide the statement. And many police, they have another task as well, really overload. And many people who have been trained has been rotated to other work. And that affect the capacity and knowledge of the police unit. And corruption, and lack of timely action or follow-up, lack of investigation practice that do not use the technique, and in financial investigation, we know that now the criminal use a lot of high technology in lure the victim, but the police, they do not be updated on the use of the high technology, how they can collect the digital evidence, things like that. So it's difficult to collect the evidence as well. And lack of the legal framework, the mechanism, and long time the cooperation to send the information from the local province to the central authority, and from the central authority to other country and back to the local level. It takes a lot of time. And by that time, when the decision is made, the victim was relocated to other place already. So looking forward, I think there's a number of challenges, but we still have solutions for that issues. And so I think it's the most important that they can set up the relationship. People know each other, who is who in that unit and who to contact in that unit. And that person should build the capacity on the language, on the skill to exchange information, on how to use the equipment, how to support in the bilateral cooperation. And we also need the support from the leadership, because if the leader knows the importance of the cooperation, then they will support the bilateral cooperation, because it's not easy. Sometimes it's very difficult. And so we see that for the case of Vietnam and Malaysia, the police attaché in the Vietnamese embassy in Malaysia is very helpful to support with the communication, and also the people who can speak the language can talk to the victim to encourage them to provide the statement. And also, I think it's important that there's a focal point 24 hours, because we do not know when the emergency call will be made. Maybe at night, maybe at days. So it's sometimes need immediate action. And also, I think not only at the national level, but at the regional level, the international levels, there's a network to support the specialist unit to cooperate between the mutual affected country to share information, to share good practice, and the advancement of specific operation investigation. And we also need the competent national authority in charge so that they can facilitate the mutual legal assistance process. And also we need specially designated prosecutors, central authority lawyers, and trained officials may be involved in making or receiving the request for international legal cooperation in trafficking case in order to cooperate closely in the preparation and execution of the request for assistance. So I think in order to support the transnational investigation cooperation, it's important to have really an enabling environment to facilitate, to support, so that that cooperation can be realized. So that comes to the end of my presentation and sharing. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks to Ms. Dan's impressive presentation. It provides a comprehensive picture for us to know how TIC operates on TIP cases in ASEAN region. I believe you must be a little bit tired. Let's take a break for refreshment. Enjoy your tea and coffee, but make sure that you come back at 11 a.m., okay? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for moderating this session. 我们现在进行中场休息时间，11点钟的时候可以邀请各位回到会场，谢谢大家。
refresh 到了哈。好，那接下来呢就是我们的语谈时间。那我们今天这个 session 有邀到2位这个语谈人哈。The first commentator is Miss Lisa. She is the thematic manager of Anti-Human Trafficking and Migration Division from Caritas, India. Let's welcome. Oh, sorry, Miss Lisa. Okay, let's welcome Miss Lisa.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you. This morning I'm very happy to be here standing before you all to speak or to comment on the speakers, what they have said before me, and also to share some of my experiences in the field of combating human trafficking. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for this wonderful conference and also giving us this opportunity to share our experiences. How can we be united to combat human trafficking? Previous speakers, during these sessions, we were discussing about networking and collaboration. I would like to ask all of you, why do we need collaboration? Why do we need networking? When we speak of human trafficking, it's a range of things that we are talking of. It's not just about one thing that we are speaking when we speak of human trafficking. It's not just one stakeholder that we are speaking when we speak of human trafficking. It's a plethora of the stakeholders that we come in contact in one way or the other and that we need to discuss. Yesterday, a professor from the University of Nelson Mandela, he spoke about how the traffickers are so organized. When you look at the fishing industry, someone is there who who is the diver, who goes to deep down, he brings the fish to the shore or to the bank of the river or the sea, and there are people who take that fish and put it in the vehicle, and from there are some people who take it to the market or maybe the packing and all, and then some. So it's a lot of people involved in that, and it's a very, very organized. So traffickers are more organized or cooperate than many of us present here. And I think, and I suppose, in each platform, when we are present, when we speak or conference, or when we are there to deliver or speak on any conferences with regard to human trafficking, networking or cooperation is one of the very important topics that we speak. It comes automatically that we need to cooperate and we need to network. We speak, but in actual, when it is at the grassroots level that we need to cooperate, it becomes very, very difficult thing. And you know, and we know, it could be between the government departments, it could be between the NGOs, it could be between any in that matter who are involved to combat human trafficking. I just would like to share one of my experiences. We had like this one meeting with the government departments, NGOs, high NGOs, and different stakeholders. And we spoke that there is now this bill is going on anti-human trafficking. A bill is going to be introduced, and it is under the Ministry of Women and Child Department. Then there was minister, member of the parliament, and she said, "Oh, how come that bill be under the Ministry of Women and Child? It should be under the Ministry of Home Affairs. So because it involves crime, so it should be under the Home Ministry. But when we speak of human trafficking, it should not be under one ministry." Yesterday we had ministers here present, and they spoke of interdepartmental collaborations or interministerial collaborations between different departments. And I think that's very, very important. And we had before me 3 speakers here. The first one, Cardinal Tangley, he spoke very, very well about the CourtNet, how the CourtNet and NGO collaborations between different NGOs, not only just Catholic NGOs,
but NGOs, ecumenical collaboration between different NGOs to combat. Globally, they are collaborating to combat human trafficking or to address the issue of human trafficking. Then we had a second speaker who spoke about the investigation or the immigration department collaboration. So there is the immigration department, and I like that very much, that they are addressing forced labor at the immigration department itself when the people are moving, and then you are there to intervene it or investigate it, that the forced labor is not going somewhere. So it's the government are interested, and then there is and you see in the point that government's interest is put into practice to this immigration department, that no more forced labor in our country, so they want to investigate. And then third speaker very well spoke about the investigation, the police department, that TIC, she spoke about transnational investigation cooperation. So between different Vietnam and Malaysia, she gave very good example how they are collaborating. But of course, due to many reasons or challenges, though they spoke about 100 cases, but they were maybe sometime only were able to address 5 cases. It could be different reasons. I just would like to give some examples, like when we look at traffickers, why do they unite? What makes traffickers to come together? It's a profit, it's a money, it's a business of exploitation, business of profit, business of money that makes traffickers together. And what should unite us together? We who are the defenders of human rights, or we the people who are promoting, and Cardinal Catlett very well put it, what should unite us together? It's the human dignity. It's the persons we want to uphold. Pope Francis also says that we want to uphold the human dignity, and that should bring us together. As NGOs, at government department, or we all those who want to address the exploitation, and that should bring us together. And somehow not looking at the different ministerial departments, or this is not my jurisdiction, or the police departments, or under this only I can, but somehow we need to connect or collaborate or network together. I would like to give some examples what we are doing in India, and also with Inter-Nepal cross-border anti-human trafficking. In prevention, we spoke of yesterday 4 P's: prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnership. And partnership is among all these 3. When you look at, in prevention, we need to partner. In protection, we need to partner. In prosecution, we need to partner. We cannot do alone if we want to address human trafficking in any of these areas. So what we are doing is, at the grassroots level, when you look at prevention in the villages, with the communities, we work with the children. We have children's parliament, children's group, youth group, skilling for the skill. We collaborate with the skill department of the government, or also a lot of government schemes which are there for the government, for the youth to enhance their skills, and livelihood programs. Then we have women and women empowerment, which we already spoke of, also gender empowerment that we are talking of. So whole group of people that we work in the community. Then we have the local governance. They can do a lot of work, and we have seen, we are working with the local leaders and the local government, and they have created like solar energy in whole of the village. They have developed education systems, and they have become a kind of vigilant group. They have started to keep the migration registration at the village level, and they are preventing human trafficking at the local level. So they keep a track of the people's movement, And one of the local leader, through the CCTV cameras which he has installed in whole of the village, was able to trap one of the trafficker and also a girl who was being taken and whom they did not know. So this is the local level that we can collaborate and sensitize and create awareness at the very grassroots level, which is very important for the prevention when we are talking of. And when you look at the protection, what we are doing, we have 3 interception booths at the 3 borders. We spoke about police department just now. Ms. Tang has spoken about the police department, that they have their own challenges. They have their own crunches of resources. They may have not just resources, but they may also do not have the enough personnel to address the human trafficking, or they are not sensitized. There are not enough women in the police department. So what we are doing, we are trying to sensitize the police peoples. We are giving them trainings in different occasions. We sensitize them on the issue how to identify the victims of human trafficking. And through the collaboration of the police and the border forces, from March to up to now, we were able to intercept at the border 99 cases. And the police, the border forces, they call us when they get any cases to counsel the victim or the suspected cases. So these are some of the things that in the protection level. And one thing which I want to also say, that somewhere we did not speak about transport department. Yesterday we just mentioned airplane or the airport, where we need to also mention, but I think transport department also we need to sensitize in how to address, and we are working with the bus conductors, drivers, auto drivers, the rickshaw fellows, the whole people who are involved in the transport department, how they can identify, how can we sensitize them that when someone is being taken, they are there to address that, and they can at least call someone or rescue that person who has been trafficked. So this is where for the protection part, and of course prosecution, no need, that you all know how we need a lot of witness, and we need to work with the witnesses, we need to work with the victim, the whole family, we need to sensitize the police department and different things. So I think this is a very, very important session when we talk of human trafficking, to collaborate and network with one another. So at the end of my point, we have very good examples from Caritas, and Caritas France is here. They have a big network in France they are addressing, and through that network even they were able to bring a policy change at the national level in France with regard to trafficking in persons. So this is, I think it's very important, and at the end of my this comment, I would just like to say to all of you that let's be united, let's work together to address this heinous crime, a crime against humanity. Thank you.
Thanks to Ms. Liza's comments. I totally agree with her. Cooperation is very important, but it is also something easy to say, hard to do. That's why we need to get together and work harder. Okay, the next commentator is Dr. Charles Chang. Dr. Chang is a professor of Central Police University, Taiwan. Let's welcome Dr. Chang.
Thank you and good morning. Mr. Gigi, the moderator of the panel, and our speakers, Mr. Hadley and Mr. Arthur, Ms. Tan, and the discussant, Ms. Lisa. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm from Central Police University, Taiwan, and glad to be here to be the discussant of the conference. The theme of the conference is to combat human trafficking. It's an issue of global governance and the global network. which is also the topic by Mr. Kaplan's presentation. And Mr. Kaplan emphasized networking among governments, among law enforcement agencies, among international businesses, and non-government organizations. I think you must have heard frequently in these 2 days about this term: cooperation, collaboration, information sharing, networking, international global governance, or liaison officers, or international law enforcement agencies, and which all belong to the terminology we used in the field of global governance. And based on Professor Billy Huang's presentation yesterday, the victims' characteristics of human trafficking include they are poor, young people, disability, low level of education, unemployment, and immigrants, social or cultural isolation. In other words, majority of human trafficking victims are minority peoples. We know that the people are born equal, so we have to make efforts to protect the rights of those minority peoples. Victims are forced to engage in criminal activities like drug cultivation, drug smuggling, and drug trafficking. Petty crime stands benefit from body organ removal, surrogacy, and forced labor in labor-intensive industries, among which forced labor is a relative popular province. And according to Mr. Patter, our second speaker this morning, business uses forced labor to reduce their cost. And forced labor is everywhere, but it is in reality an unfair practice and competition, particularly the forced labor. I just say is a human rights issue. There are several indicators of forced labor, according to Mr. Patters. They are deception, restriction, intimidation, threats, and violence, debt bondage, withheld wage, abuse of vulnerability, abusive working and living conditions, excessive overtime. And Ms. Patter is from ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement of the United States. The ICE role is to eradicate the forced labor. And in this period of global governance, which emphasizes cross-nation networking, I just mentioned, and also emphasized by Mr. Taggart, ICE and CPB are two agencies who provide the opportunity for collaboration to work together with foreign governments to eradicate forced labor. And the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Acts of 2015 and the Counter America's adversaries through Sanctions Acts of 2007 are two laws which created an additional area for enforcement relating to the prohibition of the importation of forced labor-reduced goods into the United States. But in addition to laws and law enforcement agencies, we need more mechanisms to solve the problem of human trafficking. So now I turn to ASEAN Transnational Investigative Cooperation paper by Ms. Dunn. She told us that the use of the issue of human trafficking has been put on the agenda of ASEAN since 1990s. She introduced the major related instruments and mechanisms by all ASEAN member states. From her presentation, we learned that the assessment by ASEAN in the year of 2014 revealed that a low level of intelligence exchange and investigative support across borders. But after that year, for demand-driven support, cooperation among ASEAN countries has been done. It includes training, regional meetings, a list of local focal contact person, etc. And the progress between 2014 and 2018 is obvious. Ms. Deng used a very interesting graph to demonstrate the degree of progress between any two countries to combat the human trafficking in ASEAN countries. Among ASEAN countries, the bilateral cooperation between Malaysia and Philippines is most successful. They built the report, exchange information, and take operational activities and join the investigation. In the case of relation between Vietnam and Malaysia is in the middle ground, which means that they still have a way to go. So she mentioned the challenge standing before ASEAN to combat human trafficking include a lack of a culture of cooperation, a lack of relationships necessary to facilitate cooperation, and differences in legal system, and also insufficient gender balance issues. ASEAN needs in every environment to networks of specialist units, personnel cooperating, more liaison officers. In other words, in addition to prosecution, we need prevention, protection, and particularly the partnership. And we see 4 P's in the posters of the conference. They include, I just mentioned, prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnership. And Ms. Dunn's paper argued that the critical role, the trustworthiness of partner countries plays in combating human trafficking. The first step of ASEAN's project to build a rapport, meaning that trust is the leverage of cooperation among countries. In another international conference, I ever introduced a dialect between Confucius and one of his students. In Confucian dialect, which represented the value of trust in Chinese culture. Here I'd like to share with you again about the dialect. Just the slide you can see. 2017 years ago, one of our Confucius students was appointed to be a prime minister by a state, and he asked Confucius about how to govern a country. The Confucius said, the requisites of government are that there are sufficient food, strong army, that is national defense, and people's trust in their ruler. And further, the student asked, if it cannot be helped, which one should be ignored? Should be foregone first, meaning that is the least important among the 3. Ladies and gentlemen, what's your answer? the army, said Confucius. I think majority of you choose the same one as Confucius. But the student again, he asked, if it cannot be helped, then one of the remaining two must be dispensed with. Which one should be ignored? That is the less important among the two. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, what's your answer? The food. Confucius answered. I'm not sure whether all of you choose the same answer as Confucius. But Confucius did give the reason. And he said, the country will collapse if the people have not trust in it. And this sentence has become the golden rule in Chinese and many Asian countries. Likewise, the global society needs the trust among them to solve the global problems. Like the topic today, human trafficking is transnational crime. Trust, just like glue, is able to closely connect all members, working together for a common goal. Likewise, I conclude my discussion by saying that I do believe that trust can be established through this conference. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
谢谢，谢谢以上两位评论员对我们讲者的一些回馈了。那么现在呢，就直接进行综合座谈 Q&A。我们邀请主持人步上舞台，也请两位演讲。这里让美国那位演讲贵宾呢，他因为赶回去，所以他不会出席。稍后我们就请还有两位人赞。The speaker from USA, he just left because of the time schedule, so we have two speakers and two commentators on the stage to go forward the next session. 好，那就把时间交给主持人。
好，谢谢。好，那接下来呢，就来进行我们的双向交流 （open discussion）。那我要邀请。任何想要提出问题或要可能有什么样的 feedback 或是 comments 的来宾呢，请你在提出你的问题或提出你的feedback 或 comments 之前，请你先举手。好，那我们现在就开始。Yes, please.
My name is Aloysius John, Secretary General of Caritas Internationalis. I've been listening to these very interesting inputs this morning, and I would like to connect this with what we did yesterday. So it's an observation first. Something which comes to my mind is we have been speaking very much about curative and normative actions. In other words, we are talking about damage control. But my point is, we need to prevent. There's need for preventive action. And this preventive action was also raised yesterday by one of the participants about like empowering the people, development activities, which will prevent the people from migrating. My question here is, there is a need for a policy to fight against poverty, because we saw yesterday that poverty is one of the main causes which pushes the person on the road to exile. It's one of the key elements which sends the person out of his homeland in search of something, and there he falls a prey. and he becomes a victim of anti-trafficking. So here, my question would be, how can the governments have a policy, like for example Taiwan, today they're doing this wonderful work on anti-trafficking, this seems to be a priority. My question could be, could there be something which could be done on a pilot basis in the different sending countries, wherein small micro programs are introduced, and how can the civil society organizations could be involved in order to implement them as partners? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I suppose this question is for everyone, right? Speaker and commentator. Okay, so who want to answer this question first?
Yeah, you're right that poverty is one of the root causes of human trafficking, and we can see that many women, children, and disadvantaged people would fall prey to human trafficking because of poverty. And I think one of the long-term approach, is microfinance, to provide the small loans for the women to generate the income. I think some of the model that has been piloted in South Asia country like Bangladesh, very good models on microfinance. And actually in Vietnam, the Vietnam Women's Union also have a number of programs on microfinance and provide the soft loans for the women with no or low interest, so that they can improve their livelihood, to improve the generating income activities. And there's some successful model there, and I think that's a good way of improving the living standard of the peoples, and also to support, to prevent people from being trafficked to human trafficking.
From the perspective of Caritas Internationalis, one of the strategic orientations of Caritas the past 8 years, 4 more years to come, is to develop strong and resilient communities. Not just resilience during moments of typhoons or earthquakes, but the daily disaster of poverty. And so it is not enough to just wait for a disaster like human trafficking to happen. How do we make them resilient in terms of prevention? And so livelihood, education, etc. And based on our experience, it is not just the poor looking for a better life that become vulnerable to human trafficking. Some who are poor and cannot find work, they work for the traffickers as their way of earning. So even the poor find employment in this rather horrendous manner by cooperating in the trafficking of their fellow poor. And so it must really be addressed in terms of what is a decent human life, and how do we respect the humanity of our brothers and sisters. But a last appeal. Sometimes the poor are also forced to find a better life and subject themselves to human trafficking because of the models of a good life, the models of development that are, unrealistic, inappropriate, and which enslave them. So maybe part of the prevention is, how do we engage the people in looking for models of development that are simple, not wasteful of nature, where you could be dignified, yet living in a sufficient manner. Because some of the models of a good life are really unattainable for poor people. So their choice is to move out, thinking that they will earn more, but actually they end up being more miserable. So we are also, I think, being challenged to ask ourselves, especially the business people. Pope Francis always talks about the throwaway culture. We throw away. And then some people want to, I want this, I want that. And they think that by finding new types of employment elsewhere, they will be able to get that. But they get even less or nothing.
Ms. Lisa, want to share
Just to add on what Cardinal has said, also what we are doing, we do believe very strongly that prevention is the best cure, and we are trying to build the resilient communities, and that's very important. As I already mentioned also, that we need to work on prevention, and it's very important. And there are also many organizations, Caritas and our partners, and also different NGOs who are working mostly also from the side of prevention. What we are trying to work with Nepal and India, for India, Nepal is the source country which sends people to India, and we have so many Nepalis who are working in India. So we are trying, like in Nepal, how to build the resilient communities at the source areas, look at what are their vulnerabilities, and that's important to address the vulnerability of the people. What makes them more vulnerable to being trafficked, and that needs to be addressed. And I think, as we are here to discuss about, and if, as said, the government of Taiwan is very keen on to address this trafficking, and they are also on tier 1 scale by the US State Department, their ranking. So I think it's we all as Asian country, or maybe with the Europe or other countries, if we can partner something that begins to prevent people, now like you have in transnational collaboration to investigate. In the same way, if we have those kind of, like if Malaysia needs what kind of the workforce, if they need to work in the household, they need, that's the requirement. And if Taiwan or in the Vietnam, they skill up that you need these kind of the workers, and they train them, and then they have an agreement, bilateral agreement between the countries to prevent the exploitation, and you go through proper channels, and then you go and you are employed, because we cannot prevent people from moving. Everyone has right to move. If I want a better life, I have right to move. But how can we make more safer for the people, and there is no exploitation? So those kind of, if agreement or bilateral agreement at the national, international level is being done, or maybe there is some kind of policy at Asian level, or maybe at UN, we can promote that level of agreement if that happens. So I think that will be a very, very good to go through the proper channel or train, or what kind of skills you need, and maybe we work that level. So that's my point. Thank you.
So I think in terms of long-term prevention, not just we have microfinance to improve, to eradicate the poverty, but there's a number of more comprehensive approaches to prevent human trafficking. First, we'll see that we need to improve the socio-economic situation in the country, and to create more jobs for the people, particularly in the rural areas, because we can see now there's a trend of people moving from rural area to the urban area. areas or to other countries to find a job. So I think income generating and creating more jobs and more employment opportunities is also a good way of preventing human trafficking. Social welfare, access to health and education is also important because like in Vietnam, in many cases, the young women and girls were trafficked because if there's somebody in their family who's sick or have accidents, they have to borrow money from the money lenders with very high interest rate, and that can also drive them into trafficking situation. Gender-based violence can also be the root cause, the pull and push factors of human trafficking. And so how we can reduce the violence against women and children is also one way, one strategy to combat human trafficking, to prevent human trafficking. How to raise the awareness and to provide education for the peoples in the communities, and also to educate the people as well, because in many cases we have interviewed with the offenders and they have very simple response that we didn't know that the punishment or the sentence for the offender or tip is such a high. If we know that if we got the high sentence, then we may not traffic people. So education and raising awareness on the modus operandi, the trick of the traffickers, and also the punishment is also important. And I think people should learn to protect themselves from being trafficked. Many people are easily lured to human trafficking or forced labor because they need jobs. And they easily listen to the promise by the offenders or the exploiter that they can earn high-paid job in other countries. I have interviewed many people who have no high school education, but they want to work as receptionists in 5-star hotel in Middle East. How come? Or they can become a models in other countries. How come? How can easily they can be just listen to that promise and fall prey to the trafficking links. So it's really, in order to prevent trafficking strategically, we need a very comprehensive approach with many aspects, not just one issue. Thank you.
Dr. Shaw will reply.
Yes, the poor is the first victim characteristic of human trafficking. And how to help poor people is, I think, it's going to the welfare policy of the government. But I don't think to give the poor people money is a good way. I'd rather give them a fishing rod that teach them how to fish instead of give them the fish. So I do think the best welfare policy is the education, to cultivate the poor people the knowledge and the skill so that they can live in a good way. That's my answer to this question. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to wait? Just for 1A?
As we try to address the needs of the poor, livelihood, teaching them skills, education, etc., I think we also need to address everyone, even not the so poor, those who have businesses, those who run businesses. How do we develop a social conscience? It is painful to see that these are not poor people, but wealthy people, educated, with money, with capital. They make use of the poverty of other people, the needs of other people, to earn more. Instead of a compassionate response, they see the needs of people as a business opportunity. And so you earn money by manipulating the poor. When I visited the the refugee camp in Greece, they told me that a regular bus trip from one city to the camp normally costs €5. But some drivers said, this is a refugee. This person really wants to get to the camp. They charge 25. So it is not just the poor, but those who make a living and earn more money out of the needs of the poor. And so they're very enterprising, but dehumanizing. It's a question now of conscience. But how do we develop that? When there is social conscience, there might be prevention also of exploitation. But if it is greed and making use of every opportunity, even the misery of other people, to earn more, then they will always exploit. And the other thing is, what do we do with families? I attended last November the interfaith conference on the exploitation of minors online. So a new form of human trafficking that is happening online, new forms of slavery or prostitution, especially online through the web. And according to one of the speakers, 49% of those cases are promoted by the parents of the minors. And they say the clients are not touching my child. So this is not real abuse. This is not real exploitation. I touch the child. And so the families also. And here in Asia, we always take pride in being family-oriented. But then, because of maybe poverty and also easy money, even that family protection is slowly disappearing.
Oh, yes, please. The gentleman on the back, he raised his hand first. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you and good morning. I'm Zar from Caritas Asia, which is based in Bangkok. And I'd like to direct this question to Ms. Han, which is really just a very quick question. Earlier this morning, you mentioned to us about the police's cooperation. And I wonder, between this cooperation, if there is also the involvement of other actors, such as the civil society or the non-government organizations, or other institutions that are also working in the trafficking issues. Would you mind describing to us also the involvement of other actors other than the police, if any, or if there is currently no involvement of other actors? Are there opportunities for civil society organizations or other institutions that can also cooperate in this police-to-police cooperation? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Actually, this morning I just shared the model of police-to-police cooperation, this kind of investigation to support each other in identifying and rescue victims and also exchange information and intelligence. Actually, the NGOs and CSO, the civil society organization, also have their role in the process. And actually, because we understand that we need to use the victim-centered approach in across the activities, because we know that victims play a very important role in providing their statement, and it's sometimes the only source of evidence that we can investigate or prosecute the case. Maybe during the process of the raiding or address the offender, the NGO cannot participate right at that time. But later on, I think when they conduct the interview with the victim, then some NGO can also play the role. For example, to provide the counseling for the victim first before they meet with the police, or later on after having the interview with the police, they can provide other kind of support like legal aid, counseling, or even welfare for the victim, so that they can be their psychology can be recovered first, and then they can be more cooperative with the police. So it depends on the structure and also the regulation that the NGO can participate in different stage of the process, and also it depends on the police whether they see which state the NGO can participate in the process. But we do see the important role of the NGO in the process of supporting the victim, because we know that if the victim was worried, then they are in traumatized situation, then they cannot provide good statement.
Please.
Thank you for giving me chance to talk. Benedict Alo Di Rosario, President Caritas Asia. Originally, I come from Bangladesh. Yesterday, I also spoke about the new model of development, and that will be morality-based, values-driven. And for that, I think we need to dialogue. We need to dialogue with the businessmen, people who put profit before people, businessmen who put profit before people. That's the one area that is not well taken of, well considered of, well discussed of. I see political will within the political people. I see sensitized government personnel nowadays on this issue. But I don't see interface, interaction, and dialogue among the religious leaders, business group, and also government. These three groups should dialogue so that they will understand that they are exploiting the people at the bottom, and they are making excessive profit. So I think this is very important area to look into, how they will make justified profit, rational profit. And in that area, our religious leaders, faith-based leaders, and government will work together. That is one area I think is lacking. Thank you very much.
Anyone would like to reply to this comments or question? Is that a question? Religious leader.
Yeah. I can speak from my experience and also from what has been happening lately in the Vatican, the Holy See, especially through the efforts of Pope Francis himself and the dicastery for the promotion of integral human development. And there are also some foundations that are church-based. Like, I remember I was invited to give a presentation in the Vatican. There is a foundation, the Centesimus Annus Foundation, and there were hundreds of business people who wanted to hear about the social teachings of the church and how the social teachings of the church could be bridged with models of business and models of development. It was, for me, a wonderful experience. Now, many of the business people first said, wow, we did not know that there is this body of teaching called the social teachings of the church, and they were happy to hear about that. And we have Archbishop Tomasi here. He is closely connected to the dicastery. I believe a few weeks ago, there was a meeting organized in the Vatican, a meeting with power producers, those in the petrol and the gas business, so that through Laudato Si we could find new sources of energy rather than fossil fuels, etc. So such efforts are happening. Now, maybe more could be done.
Anyone want to reply? Please.
Just it came to my mind listening to your comment. Is there any people from business side here or corporate? I think it's a suggestion also maybe for the government or the organizers. Maybe next time if we are organizing this kind of conference, it's always good to invite them as well. Because when we speak of labor department, ILO, we see that tri-party system. They have employer, employee, and the government. They sit together and discuss. So I think when we are talking of human trafficking, it's always good to involve more and more stakeholders, the exploiters, also the people, the survivors. I think here also survivors are not here. The survivors of human trafficking and also the government and the NGOs who are working. So it's always good and to address and to speak to them. And faith-based organization, when we talk of morale, I think faith-based organization can play a greater role. What we are doing in India as well, because religion plays a very, very great role, and they listen to the leaders of the religion, any community. So what we are trying to bring them, we have interfaith dialogue, when we bring them together to discuss on different issues, when there is any communal violence or maybe on trafficking, because they can address to the people and they believe, or maybe they take it their words because it's coming from the leader of the faith or what they believe. So I think it's also rightly important that we involve them as one of the stakeholders if we want to combat. And Pope Francis is taking a great step in that, and we have been part of that to combat human trafficking and also the refugee issues, which globally is very much spoken. So, thank you.
What we need in the social business is not only the pure business, because the social business is a business, but at the same time, it's the nature of NGO. But as we know that a pure NGO exists only in a civic society, which relate to the degree to which a society is developed. So it's not only the duty of the government, but I think it's a mission for the citizens of the society as well. Thank you.
Now the lady in the back, please.
Thank you. Apinja from Stella List and Caritas Thailand. I'm just sharing about police to the police. I'm working for the human trafficking at sea, the fishermen trafficking. And the police inviting Stella List to be part of the investigation team. Because of the ship visitor of Stella List around the world, we walking to the port every day and well known with the fisherman and the seafarer. And after that, when the investigation, the police cannot get information from the fisher. The fisher will talk with the staff of Stella Maris, and we will give our interpreter to translate in investigation. The case that we work is overseas also, the IUU fishing from Somalia and human trafficking from Somalia. And inside the country also, Stella Maris will be part of the team of investigation, the Royal Thai Police.
Is this a question for any speaker or no? Just a comment, okay. The lady, yeah, in the last row.
Thank you very much. My name is Nkasa Maria Udongo from Caritas, Nigeria. I wish to comment on the inter-religious dialogue, the interfaith-based dialogue, arising from the conference held in Nigeria in 2016. Caritas Nigeria organized interfaith dialogue, especially in endemic regions, Edo State, where we invited the Muslims, the Christians, the African traditional faith leaders, as well as the traditional leaders, to, as an awareness creation, because a lot of people are being trafficked because they believe in their faith leaders have not actually spoken to them, and in some cases, some of the faith leaders in some religious groups, they preach prosperity, and so they are flocked with words to prosper by enemies, and so they get led astray. So we try to bring together the faith leaders to enlighten them, to create more awareness, so that they, on their own, can preach more can talk to the people and tell them about the dangers of trafficking. In the same vein, the Catholic Diocese of Abuja under Cardinal Onaikom also organized a faith-based anti-human trafficking conference just this year, especially for the youth, to discourage irregular migration and for safe migration amongst the people. In Nigeria too, still talking about bringing together the faith-based and the traditional leaders, the chiefs, the main traditional rulers in Edo State, because a lot of people that are being trafficked from the most endemic region in Nigeria, which is Edo State, they fear maybe exposing the traffickers or even going back because they believe that a curse has been placed on them and they would die or their entire family would perish if they try to escape. So the traditional leaders took a very bold step last year to revoke such curses and also to place curses on traffickers. That has kind of tried to win back the confidence of a lot of those being trafficked because they went through some rituals before they were trafficked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Professor Liu Huang first.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Liu Huang Li Juan. I'm from National Zhongzheng University. So today, this morning, the topic is about global cooperation. But I've been so very pity every time when I attend this international workshop and when we talk about global cooperation, and we believe that this is the core to fight against cross-national human trafficking. But just look at the situation of Taiwan. Yesterday, Hanny talked about global slavery index. Yes, I've also checked out this index, and of course Taiwan is being ranked as a quite low place. One of the reasons that is because Taiwan cannot ratify international convention, so they rank 0 in this item. No matter that we nationalize let's say 5 very important UN human rights covenants, and no matter that we ranked tier 1 for 10 years in TIP report, but every time, especially for the Asian countries, because this morning when I listened to Ms. Stone, this is really very, it is fascinating, because if Taiwan wants to cooperate and can play a part in this regional, network, and you can imagine so how effective that Taiwan can play, because Taiwan, in here we got more than 700,000 migrant workers in Taiwan, and no matter to think how many Taiwan capital-based cross-national companies, in Asian countries. So definitely that Taiwan can contribute. So every time, and today, I think it's a very precious occasion because we have Caritas International and so many distinguished guests. And some guests, you are the first time to visit Taiwan. So please, you just look at Taiwan. People, they're friendly, and they're friendly, and the government, they're eager to cooperate and to play their part. So when we talk about global cooperation, so some countries will get stuck because of the one China policy. But for human rights issue, for anti-trafficking, that is beyond national identity. So please, just to think a problem-solving based approach. So even Taiwan cannot be listed as a country, but as a social entity, as a fishing entity, then we can still develop some efficient strategy to fight against human trafficking with together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The lady in red first.
Okay, the lady in red. Good morning, everyone. I'm Therese Randazzo. I'm the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Attaché based in Hong Kong, and I also cover Taiwan. And just the conversation this morning about the involvement of the business community and the role that they might be able to play. As we were talking about the conversation about the social conscience of traffickers, it occurred to me that we have actually also looked at involving third parties in the business community who are not traffickers, but are in a position to perhaps help us to identify trafficking situations. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. My agency, Customs and Border Protection, we operate a program in concert with the airlines where we provide some basic education to airline ground crews and to flight crews that help them identify, first of all, to raise their awareness of human trafficking, and then to help them identify situations where there may be trafficking going on that they did not have the education and know what to look for, they may not recognize. So with that training, we have had some successes. I'll just give one example. We had a flight attendant who had attended CBP training, and she observed an adult female with 2 children on a flight. The 2 children were visibly upset and distressed, crying, but she made no attempt whatsoever to try to comfort them, find out what their problem was, and she just thought that was really odd if that was actually their mother, their guardian, or someone who actually should have been with those children. So when her flight landed, she actually called us, and we provided a hotline because I think it's important to give people in this capacity who are third parties a very easy action they can take and not put too much burden on them. So we provide a hotline for the airlines to call, and she contacted us and told us what she had observed, and we took it from there to investigate that situation and work with our partners to investigate it. That ended up in the identification of a child trafficking ring and the rescue of 200 victims. So a very simple action like that can be useful, and I think it's important to remember to engage other stakeholders wherever you can, that there are people who do have a social conscience, even if they're not, who aren't directly involved, you might have better luck with them actually than trying to talk to traffickers. Thank you. It's just a comment, not a question.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I know maybe there are still more questions and comments, but now it's 11 after 12. So I'm not supposed to invite more questions and comments because it's my responsibility to keep the scheduled time of this agenda. So I'm going to close the session right now. And thank you very much. Thank you all for attending this morning's session. And enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. 非常感谢主持人还有我们4位贵宾一起谈。好，各位女士、各位先生，我们现在呢就进行中午的休息时间。那么下午的议程呢，刚刚在1点30分开始。The afternoon session will start at 1:30, and now we are dismissed for the lunch break. For the guests in the first section, where the yellow sling, you can stay right inside the auditorium or step. Or the red, okay, the red sling, you can stay in your table and chair. Our staff will serve the lunch box for you. And for the guests in the second half of the auditorium, you can get your badge and go outside to fetch the lunch meal. And all the meal can be used inside the auditorium. 我们跟昨天一样，可以在会场里面用餐。那么在后方的贵宾呢，您就用你的识别证在我们外面领取餐盒，好吗？那我们在前方的贵宾呢，您留在原位，我们帮您做服务。好，再次提醒，让我们下午。